Now, Kenya marks its diamond anniversary tomorrow, the 1st of June. So much has happened, and it cut across various spheres of society. Deep reflections abound on the path the country has taken from the shackles of colonialism to multipartyism, and in between the struggles and political events that have shaped the development of the country while nurturing its democracy. NTV's Melita Oletenges takes a look at some dynamics of Kenya's journey. Melita, what exactly should we expect on this front?
Dan, the temperance of democracy and governance in the present is far from what or where it all started, but the compass to fully mastering a mature democracy is crooked. In this report, I interrogate Kenya's governance and democracy of the last 6 decades, the highs and lows, and the incessant fights between the opposition and government. Kenya's reclamation of self-rule after 43 years as a British colony marked the beginning of a nation writing its own story. After attaining self-rule, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta took over the reins of power from the colonial government.
I was a 9-year-old boy. I was in class 3 in primary school, and I remember the vivid images that come to mind when I remember the independence period was the euphoria, the great joy and happiness that people had in anticipation of an independent country. I remember seeing my old grandmother almost dancing herself lame, my grandfather, my parents. Everybody around me was very happy. I was very, very, very joyous.
The forefathers or the founding fathers of this country had 3 items to fight. That was health, ignorance, and education. And those were the 3 pillars in their quest for freedom in this country. And when that was achieved, then we moved on as a country.
Kenya's move from a colony to a republic, and Kenyatta led a strong central government, giving him power to arrest political opponents and detain them without trial.
There was a modicum of democracy. I can only perhaps describe it as a democracy choreographed and shepherded, managed by the colonial powers, because Africans at the time of independence, from what I have been able to glean from associating with those who participated in independence, like the likes of Mwai Kibaki and others who are there at the dawn of independence, it was really the first election was a means to become independent and to form the nation state called Kenya. After that, the journey to grow democracy in the country started, ensued. And the first setback, of course, was the disagreement between Jomo Kenyatta and Jaramogi Oginga, which resulted in their going their separate ways because of ideological differences. And subsequently, the coming down hard on opposition or contrary opinions by the government of the day of Jomo Kenyatta, that persisted throughout the late 60s to the early 90s. And during those 2 decades, the 70s and the 80s, the country could not be, by any stretch of imagination, said to have been fully democratic. As a matter of fact, I think in many cases there was a clawback on democratic advancement.
You know, previously we were an amalgamation of tribes. Tribalism was quite a factor during that region. Even within tribes, there was serious issue. For example, even within the Kikuyu community, there was a serious divide between the Kiambu and the Nyeri Kikuyu, to the extent that the Kiambu Kikuyu would take oath that the seat of the presidency will never cross River Chania, meaning people of Nyeri will never get the seat of presidency. The people of Kiambu, quote unquote, were imagining that the presidency would forever be seated in Kiambu. And that time, the same Kiambu mafia believed they could continue to rule, quote unquote, not lead, because leading was not the issue. It was actually rulership at that time. So they thought they would continue to rule, and they attempted to block Moi. That orchestra was led by none other than Kihika Kimani, the father of the Nakuru governor now. He really wanted to change the constitution to bar Moi from ascending to the presidency. Unfortunately, time was not in his favor, and Kenyatta expired in Mombasa peacefully. And Moi had to slip in.
Kenyatta appointed Moi to his government in 1964 and then promoted him to vice president in 1967, despite opposition from the Kiambu mafia.
Mimi, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi.
Moi would then take over the reins of power as the president when Kenyatta died in 1978, facing opposition and an attempted coup in 1982. Among those arrested were student union leaders at the University of Nairobi.
We had nothing to do with the coup, but the coup just found us then. Of course, the entire student union were locked up, incarcerated. Later on, Moi was a very strange person. He would forgive very easily. Forgive. So a lot of students appeared in court several times. Then all of a sudden he says, I am opening the college. Now watoto wachana now. Mwambia warudi shule. That they should go back to school. And when we were graduating, he called us to State House for a banquet. He threw a banquet for the student leadership and told us sasa kwenda pata kazi. And he called parastatal chiefs and told them now employ them. These ones, ile maneno yao ilikuwa ya utoto. Now go and employ them. So all of us were quickly employed, except those who refused.
Under his rule, Moi passed an amendment to the constitution, which made KANU the only party permitted in Kenya. But it wasn't without fierce opposition. A clamor for multi-party grew a wave that painted his leadership as dictatorial.
After the collapse of the Berlin Wall, which I think is what triggered the wave of democratization across the globe, we in Kenya, and thanks to people like Raila Odinga, Kiraito Murungi, Paul Moite, and others, the so-called young Turks, they were brave enough, and they took on the monolith called KANU, which was the single party by constitutional decree, the sole party in Kenya.
We made an attempt to, it was led by Kirwa, attempting to form a party, but quickly Moi appointed us as assistant ministers. So we forgot about that. Within the year, I had joined the cabinet. Strangely, in that cabinet, we had a number of former student leaders who had also been who had also been arrested at that time in 1983. But we worked with Moi, nevertheless.
After immense international pressure and unrelenting demonstrations from different quarters that opposed his leadership, Moi had a change of heart on December 3rd, 1991 to repeal Section 2A that had effectively made Kenya a one-party state. Hatching a plan with Franklin Bett, his trusted Deputy State House Comptroller.
Everybody else was succinct, was clear, was precise. No change to the Constitution. Meanwhile here, I am holding a speech that is saying remove Section 2A. And that speech is supposed to be read by the President. And everybody here is saying no, no change. And you know I'm sitting at the back. And I'm looking at Moi once in a while. He takes a glance on me. Because he knows I'm holding his speech here. Then we took a break for tea. I asked him, Mzee, things are different on the ground. Then he looked at me and he said, I am the president. I will guide them. And I said, so we are not changing the speech. No change. Wow. Then we went back to the hall. It was now his turn to be called upon to speak. And he read his speech. And he knew where the statement was. Because he had read that speech, I think, close to 3-4 times. He had asked me to change a couple of 3-4 times. So he read the speech. And when he reached about that point now, he took off into Kiswahili kidogo. And I remember he told the people, what we are facing today, ile ngombele yetu, amujui, ni kitu ngumu sana, ni kitu kale sana, na inaweza kusambaratisha sisi yote pamoja, na tunaungua kama nchi. Mimi nawaomba ninyi mufikirie sawa sawa, mufikirie kweli kweli. Hapo mbele tunapoenda, I repeat it, hapo mbele tunapoenda mambo ni ngumu. Na umjue ya kwamba mko na uhusiano na dunia. Nikanyamaza. After he finished in Kiswahili, he now went back to his document. Therefore, having noted all this, I therefore declare that Section 2A be removed from the Constitution of Kenya.
After 26 years of single-party rule under KANU, elections were held in 1992 and 1997, where Moi won but in 2002. His preferred successor, Uhuru Kenyatta, was defeated by Mwai Kibaki of the National Rainbow Coalition, at the time, the birth of a new dawn.
And multi-party democracy is the bedrock of democracy. And I think after the 2002 election, because of the persona and the nature of Mwai Kibaki, and I must say that about his genuine intentions to democratize the country opened up, media opened up, everything opened up, and it culminated in the 2010 constitution. Never mind, of course, this ugly thing that took place in 2007, 2008, but which in a way itself also catalyzed the realization of the 2010 constitution. So in terms of structure, architecture, we have got a very sound basis for democracy. But of course, democracy is a social agreement, is a socio-political construct. You see, as a people, you organize yourself and manage your affairs in this and that fashion. But like any contract, it is as good as the people executing the contract. So even as we have made that democratic progress, we have also seen instances where there have been attempts to deviate from the straight and narrow. And I think it is something that we have to guard very jealously. And we must always remind ourselves the journey that we have come through from independence, through those decades, 6 decades now, to where we are, and make sure that not only do we talk about our constitution, we live it, breathe it, and implement it.
I want to take you back, just a step back.
Mimi Mwai Kibaki Naapa kwamba
In his first term, Kibaki, as the head of a multi-ethnic coalition, had the chance to heal the country's divisions.
The country is in problems. But the country is not poor. It's the leadership that was poor. He told me, children will have to go to school, as we promised, free primary education. As we know, where will the money come from? We have the money. It is not the country that did not have the resources. It is the leadership that was incapable of utilizing. It was a poverty. There was a dearth of leadership. So we will move on and we will manage. And we did exactly that because we didn't look back. He told us, don't look back. Sasa wewe kama unaendelea chingo iko namna hii unaangalia nyuma kila wakati, si hata utagonga mawe, utagonga miti, utagongwa na gari, sababu you are looking back, you are not looking forward.
In 2007, however, the violence after the disputed presidential elections exposed the continued rifts, but a national accord brought Raila Odinga and Mwai Kibaki together to form government under the Grand Coalition.
I think it worked out because the lessons that were learned from that first Kibaki government and the subsequent Grand Coalition government are what may actually have formed the basis for the handshake, which in my view was a very, very good thing for this country. The handshake was a good thing for this country. And we have realized during the Uhuru period the kind of growth that some countries only can dream of. It's only that people are not able to see it at this time. But when people look back in years to come and write down the achievements that were realized during the Uhuru government, they'll see things differently. And just like as they are seeing now what Mwai Kibaki was worth to the country, they'll see it later. There's a saying amongst the Kikuyus and the Maasais that you don't know that your cow produced a lot of milk until it dies. That is when you realize that it used to feed the family.
amekuwa amiri jeshi mkuu wa majeshi yote ya ulinzi ya Kenya.
The late President Kibaki handed over leadership to President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Kwa makofi!
Uhuru's second term saw a messy fallout between him and his deputy William Ruto, following a handshake between him and Raila Odinga. The handshake government was praised for stabilizing the country's economy, and President Kenyatta admitted to having achieved more in his second term than the first. Fast forward to 2022, the country is faced by heated political temperatures, pitting the opposition against the government.
The current political environment is very transactional. Everybody is talking about what is innate for me, what is innate for my corner, what is innate for I personally. I think that that is a dangerous in terms of political advancement, approach to politics, approach to leadership. I think that we would like to see a bit more of people working, trying to bring everybody together genuinely.
When I see what is happening in the country, it gives me a lot of worry. And I start even crying and pleading to God. Because I think if Kenya does not read at the drawing board right now, then we are in for big trouble. Because people are not listening to each other. People are not respecting each other. People are for themselves. They are no longer for the country. And my fear is the growing up generation who are innocent.
60 years later,
Kenya's democracy can be deemed as progressive.
We now speak our minds. And I don't think that would have happened a bit earlier if these debates we had with Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto had been done much earlier. The results would have been different. But thank God things had changed. But I want to point out that I had all along believed in what I continued to preach even at the Council of Governors, and that is why even my colleague governors understood me as such.
The problem with this younger generation is jumping. You don't know, I don't know where they want to go to. God help us to see them, to show them the light of the day. God help them to see reality, to put this country first more than anything else, not for themselves. But right now it has become Tumbocrat, me and me and me. For what? God created us in his own image, but we never heard God even one day saying me and me. So my concern is what I'm seeing.
The changing faces of Kenya's top leadership remains to be the true test of democracy, one that has been earned through blood, sweat, and tears. Melita Olutenges, NTV.
Well done. There you have it. Kenya's democracy journey since independence done.